downtown St. Cloud and the Glenn Carlson room. As I said, my name is Teresa Bonin, and I am president of the St. Cloud Area Chamber of Commerce. And on behalf of the Chamber, its 1,000 members and hundreds of volunteers, and the St. Cloud Rotary Club, I'd like to welcome you all to this very first 6th Congressional District candidate debate that all of our candidates can be here. Special thanks to the chair of our Chamber Board of Directors, Bernadette Perryman, who's seated here in front with C&L Distributing. Bernie agreed to sponsor this event today. Without our generous volunteers and members, our chamber would not exist, and we are the only 5-star accredited Chamber of Commerce in the state of Minnesota. Which is why we get debates like this. We're measured against the highest standards in the industry set by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And we have our volunteers, like Bernie and like many of the iterations of chamber chairs that are sitting right here in the front row, smiling at me right now. Thank you all for being here. We also have a special honored guest today. Many of you know Midge Dean, who's seated right up here as well in front. Midge has been involved in the upper echelon of Minnesota politics for decades. Her fortitude, energy, and encouragement, especially this year, is a model for all of us to follow, regardless of our political persuasion. Midge, I love you. Thank you for all your help. We have lots of media here today, and special thanks to Dan the Ox Oxner from AM 1450 KNSI for coordinating our press and media, and also for partnering to broadcast all of the candidates' debates that we have brought to you this year. So today we welcome, in the middle, our 6th Congressional District incumbent Congresswoman and Republican candidate, Michele Bachmann. Hello, Michele. And right to my immediate left is Minnesota State Senator and our DFL party candidate, Tarryl Clark. Tarryl, welcome. And finally, our Business and Independence Party candidate, Bob Anderson, next to Michele. The format of this debate will be as follows. I'll ask questions of our candidates regarding federal issues of greatest concern to our Central Minnesota Chamber members and business community. Candidates will be allowed up to 2 minutes to address each question unless otherwise stated. Candidates will be allowed up to a minute of rebuttal time, particularly if their names or positions are talked about in responses, and that will be at the moderator's choice and privilege. I encourage each of you to be clear and concise in your answers so we can cover as much ground as possible in this quick hour, and a beeper will sound at the end of your time, at which time you should complete your sentence and stop. Our timekeeper is Chamber Staff Member Jill Copeland, right here in front. And she will be signaling you when you have 30 seconds remaining and when your time has expired. Now, this is a large crowd, and I strongly encourage the audience to be respectful and considerate of all of our candidates. There were some guidelines on your seats as you entered. This is the first time these candidates have come together in a public forum, and we want as much time as possible to hear from them. So I strongly urge you all to refrain from inappropriate applause, outbursts, or criticisms. And this is very exciting. It's very exciting that the 6th Congressional District is one of the most watched political races in our nation. Many, many people are watching your behavior right now. So let's show them the high degree of respect that Central Minnesotans give to all of our candidates who are willing to represent us and serve our interests in Washington, D.C. So is that agreed? That's the rule. As we proceed, I encourage each of you to remember the Rotary 4-way test and be considerate of these candidates who have given so much of themselves to run for Congress. Okay, let's get started. You ready? We're going to start with Bob. Are you surprised, Bob?
No, I'll take that. Thank you.
Right.
Oh, at least I can test my mic out.
Yeah, you do need to press the button on your mic when you talk, and when you finish, press the button.
Press that button.
All right, question number 1. The 6th Congressional District election has generated lots of statewide and national attention during this election season. Why do you think the seat is so important to everyone, and why are you the best candidate to fill it? Bob Anderson.
Well, Well, this is the most heated race in the country because of the money being spent on it. Most of the attention is focused on that part of it, but what we got here is the 6th district is the most conservative district in the state. We've got Congresswoman Michele Bachmann representing us, and she's on a national figure level. It's not only about the 6th district. So she can raise a lot of money, and Senator Tarryl Clark can raise a lot of money. So then we've got Bob, Citizen Bob, going up against these two machines.
No.
That happens to us Independence Party candidates a lot. So we got a real David versus Goliath story going here, and that's what the story should be about. We've got Bob from the private sector, a small business owner representing the people, going up against two big political machines, the establishment. So they're following it. Fox News on a national level has included me in the documentary because they know that having three people in this race, it's going to be a close race. So thank you.
Michele.
Teresa, I want to thank you. I want to thank the St. Cloud Chamber of Commerce. I also want to thank the Rotary here in St. Cloud for being here and all of the tremendous interest that there is on both sides. This race is one where there's a clear choice in the candidates, and I'm thankful that we can do this so everyone can see and hear all of the answers that there are today. Because as I have gone across this district in the last 2 years, whether I'm in Cokato or Paynesville or St. Joe or Afton or Bayport or Ham Lake, it's been increasingly clear that the issue comes down to 3 issues. Number 1, it's jobs. Number 2, it's more jobs. And number 3, it's been even more and better jobs. That's what people are worried about all across the 6th Congressional District because they've seen not only their purchasing power diminish in the last 2 years, they've been very worried about what's going to happen in their job going forward. I'm actually very optimistic about what we can do and what we will do. Like Bob, my husband and I are also private business people. We came from lower middle class backgrounds. We worked and put ourselves through school. We bought and flipped a couple of houses, pulled out equity, started a business. We've provided over 50 jobs here in the 6th District. That's what I want to continue to do when I go back to Washington, D.C., is focus on job creation. We've seen the current dynamic of the government spending more money than we can possibly imagine, not working to create jobs. But we do know what does work, and that's encouraging the great entrepreneurial spirit that's evident here in the 6th Congressional District. We have great people here who are job creators in the 6th. The last thing we want to do is pull more money out of the 6th, ship it off to Washington, D.C., to more very highly paid bureaucrats. We want to keep that money here in the district so that we can use it in your back pocket and the consumer's pockets so we can buy more and grow the economy. So I look forward to the debate today.
And Tarryl Clark.
I want to thank you all for being here as well. Can you hear me in the back? All right, I guess we got to talk closer and louder. I want to thank you all for being here as well. Thank you to our Chamber and Rotary members. I'm a proud member of both. We have so much facing us in front of us. We are at a critical crossroads at a challenging time, and with some of the highest unemployment and highest foreclosure rates in the state, so does the 6th District. I talk to people every day, families, seniors, small business owners, veterans, students. People are struggling too much right now, and they're fed up. They're fed up with the special interests, the wasteful spending, the exploding deficits in Washington. And I got to tell you, as someone who has voted to cut our budget 10% in the last 2 years alone in the state Senate, I'm fed up too. Now, our Congresswoman you just said jobs are the most important thing, but by your own admission, you have done nothing to pass a substantial piece of legislation that would do anything for the people of this district. You voted against every single measure that would create a job, help a family stay in a home, or help families struggling to make ends meet. That needs to change now. I've been in the legislature with your help for the last 4.5 years, have worked hard with business, with labor, with our transportation people, a variety of people to come together to get things done here. I was born in a Republican family, an Eisenhower Republican family. We knew how to get every penny out of every dime. Doug and I are longtime high school youth ministers. I've run a statewide organization. I know how to meet a payroll and a bottom line. The contrast couldn't be clearer here. We can either have somebody who can talk the talk or somebody who's spent a lifetime of walking the walk. I look forward to having an honest discussion of the issues facing us. Thank you.
And Michelle, would you like a rebuttal to that?
Well, I grew up in a Democrat family, and I look forward just to where we're going forward with this. I think let's just go on and get to more questions. I think.
Okay, thank you. You okay? Great. All right. And Michelle, you will have this next question first. Let's talk about what's on lots of business owners' minds, and that's the federal deficit. With a deficit of 1.3 to 1.4 trillion with a T dollars, people are wondering, where are we going to get all this money? Are we saddling our children and grandchildren with a huge debt that possibly will never be settled? What's your view of the national deficit, and how do we get out of this jam?
Thank you so much for asking that question. I'm glad that it was really the first question because it's been the defining issue, I think, going forward in the last 2 years. We have never seen this unprecedented level of debt before. Under George W. Bush, there was way too much debt. In the last year of George Bush's presidency, we looked in excess of $400 billion in debt. I agreed with candidate Obama when he said that he wanted to reduce the deficit in 2008 because George Bush, frankly, spent way too much money. But what happened? In the first 12 months under President Obama, the first deficit was $1.4 trillion. Were we in a mess? Yes. But when you're in a hole, you don't dig it down even further. That's what happened the first year. That's $1.4 trillion. Now this year, it's almost $1.3 trillion. But the federal government failed to include all of the money that we're spending on bailing out Freddie and Fannie. That's an additional $200 billion. So the deficit actually is far worse this year than last year. Teresa, you said you made the right point. Where are we going to go to get this money? Look around. We're the ones who are going to pay that money out of our personal pockets, out of our businesses. But what's even worse is that the debt-paying generation, those that are 30 years of age and below, they are the individuals that are going to look at a future where they have future choices because they're the debt-paying generation. You know how it is in your own life or in your own business. If you spend too much money, you have fewer choices. We're looking at a markedly reduced standard of living for the next generation. I'm a former federal tax litigation lawyer. I'm an attorney, but I also have a postdoctorate degree in federal tax law. I've seen in very personal ways how high taxes devastate individuals, businesses, farmers. We want to grow the economy, not stifle it, and we'll talk about that more as we go on.
Thank you. Senator Clark.
Well, this is a critically important issue, and certainly something that where the federal government and the state government is very different. People like our Congresswoman can go ahead and keep having debts and exploding deficits. We can't do that in the state legislature, nor can we do that in our homes or our businesses. We actually have to balance the budget. So I've worked hard over the last 5 sessions to make sure that we're doing a combination of things, keeping taxes down for 97% of Minnesotans, particularly trying to keep property taxes down because we know what an impact it's had on our businesses, our schools, our local governments in terms of just shifting services. But I think Congress actually needs to do pay-as-you-go. You voted against pay-as-you-go, which is kind of an odd thing for someone who says they're a fiscal conservative. We've actually balanced budgets. As the governor has been telling many of you, we've cut 10% of the budget in the last 2 years alone. It wasn't pretty, but we made sure that we were also keeping our seniors, our students, our public safety in mind as we were moving forward. So I strongly support pay-as-you-go. I believe Congress needs to cut their own budgets. We cut our state Senate budget in both of the last 2 bienniums. I cut my own compensation after the economy tanked. And it's important that that's something that Congress does too. You don't need to wait for a bill. You can actually start doing it. And Congresswoman, the only budget you have control of right now is your congressional budget. Start with that instead of sending out hundreds of thousands of dollars of campaign-style mailings at taxpayer expense, radio ads at taxpayer expense. That's a place that you could start right now. For me, I'm going to go in and make sure that I cut my budget. We do pay as you go. And as we started at the beginning, Teresa, this really is about getting people back to work. An awful lot of this recession had to do with the financial meltdown. We need to get our small businesses going, get tax incentives that will actually help our businesses get moving here, not outsourcing our jobs overseas.
Thank you. Bob Anderson, your view on the deficit.
Well, first of all, I want to make it perfectly clear to everybody in this room. Congress is responsible for what we have going on, and there's not one independent in the entire House of Representatives. So no independent can take credit for the mess that the other two parties have created. So starting with that, I would go in and we have to look at the budget and we have to make cuts in all departments. All the way across the board, nobody could be exempt from it. Then we have to stop the spending, which has been accelerated since the Democrats have taken over. Then we've got to make sure that in order to create jobs, I think the fastest and greatest way is to bring the jobs back to this country that we're outsourcing overseas. I'm glad that Senator Clark has picked up on this message that I've been preaching from the beginning of my campaign. The biggest thing that's hurting us in our country is we're not manufacturing anymore. I come from that sector. I manufacture crowns and bridges, dental. For many of you in this room, maybe have had some appliances made by myself. That's what we do. We manufacture and we have customer service. And we have a budget we have to take care of also. So the federal government, like you're talking about the state government having a balanced budget, maybe you're in favor of having a balanced budget on the federal level too, Senator Clark. So that's something we'll probably address later. But we really have to stop the spending. We have to get people in there that have some small business background, that aren't tied to the special interests, that can go in and really look at it objectively, look at the best ideas from both parties without having to worry about siding with the enemy. It's time that we put a few independents in there and take a different look at things and have a fresh perspective of what's going on in Washington. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, we'll have a 1-minute rebuttal round. Go ahead.
I wish Speaker Pelosi would have followed her own pay-as-you-go rules. That's been a big part of the problem. She passed this, she made a big deal out of it, and then she refused to follow her own spending rules. So much of the spending that was given wasn't paid for. That's why you have a $1 trillion deficit at the end of the year. Now, I voted against the $1 trillion failed stimulus bill. And I will tell you, when I talk to people in Annandale or Buffalo, or when I'm talking to people down in Bayport, they are not happy with that bill. They wish we wouldn't have voted for it. Unfortunately, one of my opponents, Tarryl Clark, said that she would have favored the stimulus bill. I fought against the government takeover of health care. My opponent said that she would have been for that bill. When it comes to the votes, I also took on the Bush administration and I said no to the $700 billion bailout. That's where we need a strong voice in Congress to take on either party to say no to the out-of-control spending.
Thank you. Senator Clark.
Teresa was hoping this was happening. I got to tell you, you're not running against Speaker Pelosi. You're running against Tarryl Clark and Bob Anderson, and you need to go ahead and explain your votes to the people of this district. It's really important to know that you're going to have somebody in Congress, if you vote for me, who is going to go and be a fighter to make sure that these things happen. I fought to make sure that we were holding taxes down for over 97% of our Minnesotans and made sure that our small businesses were in good shape as well. You brought up the stimulus bill, you brought up the health care bill. Well, you failed on all those accounts. They still happen. Ironically, in the recovery bill, that had the biggest tax cut for middle-class Minnesotans in the last 100 years. So whether it's tax practices, whether it's things like health care or others, we can come together to actually find solutions. That's what we need to do. It's not enough to be loud. You have to work with people on the other side of the aisle to actually find solutions.
And Bob.
Just one point, that I agree with the pay-as-you-go also, but you have to make the cuts first. Otherwise, we're not reducing the deficit at all. Make the cuts, then go forward pay-as-you-go. You've got to do both. Thanks.
Okay. You're okay moving forward to the next one? All right. We'll give 2 minutes on this as well. In our business retention calls through our Grow Minnesota program, business owners cite, and this is a direct quote from many of them, uncertainty about what the government is going to do to us next as the biggest reason that they're holding off on capital expenditures and delaying reemployment of laid-off workers or employment of new workers. So what would you do in Congress to give business owners their confidence back to grow their businesses again? And Senator Clark, you'll start with this.
There's always been a lot of uncertainty for probably at least 10 years. I mean, what I've been hearing from people throughout the past decade and certainly the last several years is really a lot of fear. Escalating health care costs have been around for a while. Worries about what property taxes are going to be there, worries about what more government regulations might be there, worries about whether or not some help that people have been getting are going to continue to be there as well. And so people have a right to be concerned. But I have to say the single most thing I hear about from small businesses is real concern over still not being able to get access to cash and capital from banks. That Wall Street got bailed out, Main Street got run over, and that every single thing that could be done to be helping small businesses get moving, that our Congresswoman voted against those things. Now, I think that while the bailout was absolutely wrong because it didn't have any kind of accountability in it, we were told that the banks were going to get lending again, and they haven't. Now, we've got great community banks, and they've managed to work through these tough times and have been able, now with some new help, get some guarantees for loans. But that's something that you voted against. I'm a little perplexed about that one as well, if we're serious about getting our small businesses going. But it's the big banks that we need to be getting to, making sure that they are going to get lending again as well. Now, the relationship that I've had with people in this room, and certainly throughout the state, is the kind of way I will conduct myself as a member of Congress. I will keep working with you, talking with you, listening to you, so that we can find solutions to move forward. We need common sense regulations, yes, but we don't need a lot of red tape. We need to make sure that the government isn't doing wasteful spending like a jet engine that the Pentagon didn't want, that for some reason you thought was important to have. People need to have confidence that we're going to live within our means, just like our businesses have, but that we're also going to make smart investments to help you grow your jobs.
Thank you. Bob Anderson?
Well, I think there's a lot of uncertainty with the health care bill that was pushed through, some of the other big spending things that are going on with the Congress right now. And I think what I came up with was 6 solutions for the 6th district on our economy. And I think the first thing is that when I talked about earlier is outsourcing. We have to stop it. I want to encourage people to employ here back in the district, in the state, and the country. But in order to do that, we're going to have to make sure that we have a business-friendly climate, not only in the 6th district, but in the whole state. So we can't, there's uncertainty if this cap-and-trade legislation is going to be pushed through with the Democrats pushing, card check legislation. As small businesses in the 6th district, there's a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of small businesses, and they just want to have government. They want to be there when you need them, but in other words, let us just do our job. We have to have common sense regulations. We can't over-regulate. And I do encourage the smaller banks to be able to have capital so small businesses can either invest in new technology or have the money to just carry through in some of these tough times. And then there is ways to use our technology to our advantage, because of the labor costs. So the unions are going to have to come to the table too. We all have to make sure that we're going to make a joint effort to make it a business-friendly climate, and then get the money available. The big banks got the huge bailout, and they got money loaned to them for practically no interest. That's got to trickle down to the community banks so we can get investment going. But we have to have confidence, and nobody's really sure with this administration which way they're going to go. So, and with these tax cuts, too, Congress did a disservice. They didn't vote before they recessed on what they're going to do with the Bush tax cuts. I think that was a deception on their part, and I think they should be held accountable for it.
Thank you. And Congresswoman Bachmann.
Thank you so much. Uncertainty is the word that I have heard more than any other when I talk to job creators all across the district. And the very first time I heard the word uncertainty was from a window manufacturer in Bayport. This was back in 2007. And he said, Michelle, the best thing that you could do in the United States Congress is please just stop doing all of these big things all the time. It'd be so nice if we could go to bed at night and know when we wake up in the morning that the rules of the game won't be changing. That's all we've seen for the last 2 years, dramatic changes in our country that haven't calmed the waters. It's actually created more uncertainty. And I had mentioned that the Speaker Pelosi had adjourned, and Bob just mentioned that as well, that she adjourned. And so now every business owner, every job creator in the United States has no idea what the tax tables will be 1 second after midnight. Now, who is going to go take out a loan? Who is going to expand their business? Who's going to hire new people if you don't even know what the tax tables are going to be 1 second after midnight? What do we know? As of today, right now, based upon what's happened in the United States Congress, every single taxpayer in the United States is looking at the largest tax increase in history, coming up 1 second after midnight. Oh, don't worry, we're told. In the lame duck session, we'll take care of all that. We don't know that. Right now, we're scheduled to have huge tax increases, plus cap and trade. This is a huge energy tax going forward. People, businesses, people, individuals don't know, will we be seeing that when it comes to the health care bill? They don't know what's going to happen with the health care bill. We're already seeing the collapse of private insurance markets, and we're seeing businesses making a decision that they'll pay a fine to the federal government rather than spending to meet the new mandates under health care. I hope we can address those questions going forward as well. We can get to certainty, but not with these huge changes. Thank you.
And we're going to run a 1-minute rebut round on this. So, Senator Clark.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and you're the one that's there. Neither of the rest of us are in Congress right now. And I think, let's be clear, you've let the middle class down twice. First, voting against the tax cuts in the Recovery Act, and then leaving without getting this job done. And I hope that you're committed to making sure that when you go back after the election that this gets done, so that every single person in this room will know exactly what's going to happen with their taxes before the end of the year. I mean, that's really an important thing. Now, ironically, that same manufacturer is in a boom right now because of the Recovery Act. They have been able, they are the leading manufacturer in the company. I mean, what's amazing about Anderson Windows is that they already were making an efficiency so high that they didn't have to change the parameters under which they were doing business to all of a sudden be able to have a great outcome for themselves and their employees and their community because of the Recovery Act. So if you're looking for some good energy efficient windows, I encourage you to get windows from them.
We need to back off of our mics just a little bit. I've been told that we're blowing all the equipment.
Sorry.
Bob, would you like a rebuttal round to the question on instability, on uncertainty?
Well, I think we've covered that pretty well, and I think that was ridiculous. And the Speaker of the House is Democrat Nancy Pelosi. So I think if they really were there to represent and really were going to face the constituents when they got back, they should have done it then. That takes guts. But now they'll probably try to do a compromise once they get back. Well, that's a little, like I said earlier, deceptive. So I think we need somebody in there that's going to shake things up and realize that, hey, if we're going to go there to represent, we need to represent our constituents, whether we vote the way that, it's not popular or not, but we have to take that vote.
And our final word, possibly, from Congresswoman Bachmann.
Well, I voted no on adjournment. When that issue came up before the body, I voted no because I believe we needed to stay in Washington, D.C. and settle the uncertainty going forward. Unfortunately, it was your team that had made the decision that we were going to adjourn and go home and kick the can down the road until a lame duck session. This is something that should not be done. And again, it's the problem in Washington, D.C. They don't think like people do back here in St. Cloud, Minnesota. I've been willing to shake things up, and that's why I've been a top target for defeat by Speaker Pelosi. Now, my opponent on my right has been continuing to defend the stimulus, the $1 trillion stimulus program. The stimulus has been an abject failure, and all across the district, as I sit down and talk with people, whether they're individuals or whether they're businesses, they're uniformly in agreement that the country is on the wrong track, and that part of the wrong track was this failed $1 trillion stimulus that spent things like over $70,000 to study the effects of cocaine on monkeys. I mean, these are the kind of projects that were getting funded, or $30 million to put signs up to tell you that the government is working for you. This is nonsense spending, and it's what people want to end in Washington.
Okay, 30 seconds. You get 30 seconds.
I have to wait till my mic's on. Okay, first off, again, tax cuts, biggest tax cut that's happened in 100 years. There's money in there to help our communities, keep our hospitals open, keep our police officers on our streets, and keep our teachers teaching in our classrooms. There was important projects for our district, which ironically, while you've been attacking me for it, you then sent in 6 letters saying we want money because it's going to create thousands of jobs in our district. You can't have it both ways. I am not Speaker Pelosi. They're not my team. The people in this room are my team. Not sure who yours are, but this is who mine is.
No. 30 seconds, Michelle. Would you like 30 seconds? And then I'll give you 30.
I don't think anyone would argue that the stimulus bill gave anyone the biggest tax cuts in 100 years. What you will see going forward, however, are the largest tax increases. Why? Because someone has to pay for this $1 trillion stimulus bill. And so that's why going forward, 1 second after midnight, you're going to see huge tax increases, and that will be particularly on the job creators. And we know that this is what we're looking at, and that's why you see the level of uncertainty that you do today.
Bob, you can have 30 seconds to wrap it up.
Thank you. I would just like to say that stimulus bill should have been focused more on transportation and infrastructure projects. That would have been a wise thing when we have a lot of needs out there in that particular area to create some private sector jobs to take care of the things that were already in need. So I would have supported some of that, but not that big bloated bill that ended up being there.
Great, thank you. Okay, we're going to move to a couple of topical areas that have been important to the Chamber, and Senator Clark, you'll be first to answer. We're going to reverse the order now, too, so it'll go this way across the stage. The Employee Free Choice Act, also known as card check, would make it easier for unions to organize by effectively eliminating the secret ballot and imposing binding arbitration if the employer fails to agree on a contract with a newly formed union. How would you vote on this act, which is H.R. 1409, if it comes up in the House of Representatives? Senator Clark.
I've always had a good working relationship with our business community and with labor. I'm a liaison in the Senate between labor and business on a number of issues. On both sides, I've been willing to stand up and tell people when I think they're wrong. I've also been willing to go ahead and be an advocate for each group when I thought it was right. I've been a good liaison between metro and rural folks, and same between environmentalists and manufacturing and agriculture, and that's what I'm going to continue to do. I believe that the U.S. Chamber has put out a lot of misinformation about this. I think it's important to have a level playing field both for business and for our employees. What this bill would essentially do, or what the proposal would do, is that in addition to the opportunity to organize the way it currently is, where there can be a vote at the end of the day, a vote that where those businesses, and none in this room, where businesses will not allow organizing to happen if 50%, over 50% of the employees come forward and say they want to be in the union, they can go that way. So I think, what's important, I'm not there right now. I want to work with people on both sides to make sure we have level playing field. And I think a much bigger issue right now for our employees and for our companies is this continual outsourcing of our jobs, of helping make sure that those who are getting rewarded for jobs going overseas are getting the benefits. I think we should be closing those tax loopholes and helping take some of that money to pay down our deficit and then some of the money to do incentives for our businesses to create jobs here at home. That would be good for both employees and good for business owners.
Congresswoman Bachmann, your views on the Employee Free Choice Act.
I think you've just heard a politician tell you that, yes, she will be voting on card check. I think that's what you've just heard. I will tell you very simply and very clearly that I will be voting no on card check. And the reason why I'll be voting no is because I have spent numerous hours with people across the district who have told me how devastating this bill would be on the future of job expansion, job creation, and job growth. It's important as a business owner, and again, my husband and I have started our own business. We were, like I said, we were lower middle class people. We bought a house, flipped a couple of houses, improved them, pulled equity out, and we started. We put our capital on the line. We don't have guaranteed sick days. We don't have guaranteed vacation days. We've got a lot of kids that we support. We make a lot of right decisions. I say all of that to tell you it's hard to make a profit. It's hard to grow a business, but it can be done. But something like this anti-job move in card check won't help us for more job creation. This is big labor's #1 wish list item. My opponent is heavily supported by big labor interests, and she's going to be voting for car check, and that will not be a good decision for growing jobs here in the St. Cloud area or around the United States. So I'll tell you quite frankly, and I will vote no.
And Bob Anderson, Employee Free Choice Act.
I will be voting no. That was in 2008 when I ran. That was one of the biggest questions that people are constantly asking me about. And I would like to find out if Senator Clark is going to give a definitive answer on that today. I am a small business owner operator, so I know. I'm the one in this room that has the experience dealing with these things. They come from the public sector, both of them. Yeah, but you're not an owner-operator. You wouldn't have voted against the parity bill with those mental health care clinics. So anyway, I know, and there's no unions in dental laboratory work. So I can't say, speaking from somebody that's been in a union, but I appreciate unions, and I think should just leave it the way it is. They should be able to unionize if they want, but I don't want to take away the secret ballot. I think the membership is declining, and that's why they're trying to do something to move things forward. Now, Senator Clark, you better let the audience know, because you know what happened to Blanche Lincoln when she didn't go along with what the unions, they put a lot of money in her campaign. She didn't side with them. They spent $10 million in a primary against their own candidate. That's outrageous and absurd. So you better get that clarified before you get any more union endorsements.
I think come on now. I think we'll go 30 more seconds, all right? So, Tarryl, you want to go 30 more seconds on this?
My parents were realtors. I grew up in a family where it was often feast or famine. I know what it's like for a business to have a real hard time making ends meet. I've worked with small businesses, medium businesses, large businesses. I am proud of the fact that I have over 45,000 people, mostly from Minnesota, who have been contributing to my campaign. I am beholden to no one. But it's important that we give people a fair shake. I will tell you what I hear from labor, what I hear from businesses, what I hear from veterans, what I hear from a lot too many seniors is the #1 issue is jobs. Let's get to creating jobs. This is not the big issue in front of us. What the big issue is, how we're going to get back to creating more jobs. But let's be fair about how we're doing it.
Congresswoman Bachmann, 30 seconds.
Well, my opponent on my right had 2 chances to answer that question, and we still haven't gotten a straight answer from her.
No.
And my answer remains the same. I will vote no.
Yes, Mr. Anderson.
No for me also.
Okay. All right. I would appreciate, if you feel like you need to clap, take a minute and clap for your candidate right now, all right? Okay, another topical issue that's been very, very hot and very interesting for business owners is the Affordable Health Care for America Act. And Bob, you'll be given opportunity on this question first. It recently passed the House and the Senate. What do you think still needs to be changed in the act, and how would you work in Congress to make that happen?
Well, I don't support this big, massive overhaul of the health care reform, but I do appreciate the President Obama administration for at least tackling this, because as a small business owner, operator, that's been our biggest cost over the years was our health care premiums. They kept going up and up and up. And even in the years when we didn't have any claims, they'd say, well, yeah, but somebody else in your pool had a claim, so then that's why we increased your rates. I think we need a lot more competition, so we have some choices out there. I do fault the Republicans for when they were in power that they didn't do some immediate, incremental, common sense changes, that they could take away the pre-existing conditions. We should be able to go out and qualify for like a health savings account, whether I go out as Bob Anderson or whether I go out as Anderson Dental Studio. If you go out as an individual, you have ever had a fever, you're probably not going to qualify for the plan. But if you go out as your employer-based plan, you fill out about 3 questions and you're on. That has to change if we're really going to reduce the costs. I think there's some cost control measures that were passed in that bill, and I think we have to make sure those stay in there. But the mandate of making people purchase the health care insurance premium, I think, may be challenged on a constitutional level.
Thank you. Senator Clark, health care reform. Anything you'd change in there?
Yes, definitely would. Let's face it, the status quo couldn't be the same. I mean, we just couldn't go ahead and keep the way things were going. Looking around the room, thinking about the work that we've done together with CentraCare, looking at people like Sandy and the work that you've done with insurance, looking at families. We just couldn't afford the escalating healthcare costs that were happening. And I know that I've heard many stories, from a woman I met the other day whose health coverage doesn't include mammograms, even though her family has a significant history and she's 58 years old. She needs to be taking them. And for the first time, insurance companies will be having to make sure that that's something that is part of this. I believe that in America, a family ought to be able to purchase an affordable plan that will allow them to take their kids to the doctors, go to the hospital when they need it, and that if you're a senior, you get the care you need. When Doug and I were first married, when I was pregnant with our oldest son, Colin, we didn't have family insurance. And what that meant was we had to find a doctor who would let us pay as we went, who took that risk, and then we had to prepay for my delivery. And when I was in labor, they were trying to put oxygen on my face, and I batted it away because I was worried we couldn't afford it. No mom, no dad should ever have to go through that. So there are problems with this bill, but unlike you, Michelle, I want to go and fix it. I want to make sure that we're doing things for cost containment. I really didn't like the mandates. We proved otherwise in this state that we could get to close to universal coverage without it, and we can use our resourcefulness and ingenuity to make this work.
And Congresswoman Bachmann.
Well, healthcare, the problem that we have been experiencing in the last few years is unbelievable escalating costs in healthcare. And those costs, in many cases, have been for a number of reasons, and it is a complicated issue, but many of them have been mandates that have been driven by the government at various levels. I voted no on the health care bill because I knew it was going to be an unworkable mess, and I've got a chart that all of you can have that shows the new health care system and the bureaucracy that all of us will face. Put yourself or your loved one on one side of that chart, look at the bureaucracy you'll have to go through, and put your doctor on the other side of that chart. If you thought you had bureaucracy before, you haven't seen anything like the level of bureaucracy that's just been created. We're looking at putting no new doctors into the system, but we're looking at 30 million more people that we're looking at. I have a solution. I'm the first member of Congress that voted to repeal this brand new government takeover of health care, but with a solution, and this is it. Let's deal with costs. Let's let every American purchase any health insurance policy they want, no minimum mandates, go anywhere in the country to buy that health insurance policy, pay for it with your own tax-free money. In other words, ramp up health savings accounts. They're all going to go away under this Obamacare bill. Let people pay for it with their own tax-free money. The rest let people fully deduct on their income tax return. And then something that unfortunately Speaker Pelosi and President Obama have been unwilling to do, have true medical liability tort reform. That will bring down the cost of health care and open up access. Let's at least start with these cost savings before we impose a new government-created bureaucracy.
Okay, thank you. This next question, we'll start with Congresswoman Bachmann on this, and you're going to love this. I'm going to give you a minute and a half to solve this one. Yesterday, I went to a very interesting website, the U.S. National Debt Clock, shown in real time. If the audience is interested, log on to usdebtclock.org. What caught my interest was a section called Unfunded Liabilities. Social Security liability, $14.6 trillion. Prescription drug liability, $19.3 trillion. Medicare liability, almost $77 trillion. We have $111 trillion of unfunded liabilities. That's almost 100 times the current federal deficit that we're also concerned about. So it's clear this needs to be addressed, the overall entitlement system of the United States government, yet no one really has the stamina to do it. So if you're elected, how will you specifically address the entitlement issue at Congress?
This is the driver now with the debt clock, and that's a great question because I think We're looking at a playing out of this huge debt problem. If you look at what's happened in Greece recently with the riots that are going on there, and if you look at France, and there's still riots that are undergoing there, France and Greece are where the United States could be if we don't have a course correction, and very soon, specifically because of these unfunded federal net liabilities. When I was doing my postdoctoral work, this was my area of concern, this funding. What we need to do is reform the current system of entitlements that we have, and we need both Republican, Democrat, and independents to sit down, because this problem is bigger than one party. We need everyone to be involved, because I never, ever want us to get to the point where a senior citizen goes to their mailbox and they open it up and there's an IOU in there from the federal government rather than what a very vulnerable senior will need. Let's be adults about this. Let's not demonize each other and make this a political football. Let's solve the problem, and we have to both get together, or all three get together, and make sure that we have the solution. I think that we can.
Bob Anderson, entitlement programs.
Well, we have to make changes. We can't have an unsustainable, unfunded things that we have, especially Social Security being the number one. Now, I don't support privatizing Social Security and putting it into the stock market, because I think that would have been really a risky adventure, especially in 2008 when the markets took the crash they did. So I think I'd be open to discussion and find ways that we can, like Congresswoman Bachmann said, is getting a team of players together that really know these things, get the brightest and smartest minds out there, and put politics aside, because this is affecting all of us. It's really a crucial thing that we have to get our debt under control, because it's a national security issue also, because we have China taking care of it. They got so much leverage over us because we're in such a financial debt that we have to take care of some of these things. So I think we have to look at ways. It's got to be an open discussion based on the brightest minds out there that we can figure this out together, because we're all going to be in a big hole if we don't. So I think now's the time to address it, and maybe that's one way that everybody can come together in this country on an issue this big, that we can solve it and at least make some corrections.
Thank you. And Senator Clark, entitlement programs.
I'm going to go back to actually the health care one really quickly, because I was very surprised to have you say two different things. One, no minimum mandates on health care. That means no maternity coverage, no coverage if you have MS. That's kind of going backwards in my mind. And if you're only doing deductions, everybody needs to hear this, because if it's deductions only, that's either the biggest tax increase or the biggest pay cut you're going to ever get. The only people who that's going to work for are the wealthiest people who can afford to pay up front and are okay with only getting a portion of that money back. Part of the way our wages work right now, our wages and benefits, has been for the last 50 years through employer-provided health insurance. And if we're going to keep it that way, which I think maybe you're saying we're not, we ought to be talking about that. On the debt clock, again, I'm going to go back to my previous answer. We need to pay as you go. We need to make cuts. I have worked on Medicare and Medicaid issues for a long time. I'm a former senior law attorney. I know that there is way too much regulation and paperwork in a number of these things. We are rewarding costly states instead of rewarding places like us who actually offer good care, good outcomes. Senator Klobuchar really worked on this issue, but it doesn't go far enough. I believe that there is waste and there is some fraud in that. But we know, again, right here in central Minnesota, that if we can work together, we can come up with more contemporary ways to be dealing with Medicare and Medicaid so that we can move forward, because those are our most immediate issues.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move ahead. All right. 1 minute on this next question, and it has to do with federal funding of projects in our district, particularly transportation projects. This is a very important piece of our economy for our businesses, and it helps our businesses be successful. So how would you pursue federal funding for transportation projects in our district, and which ones have priority? And Bob, we start with you on this question.
Well, I would definitely be a fighter for the 6th District as an advocate for making sure that funds that are available for us, that we get our share. I think on the transportation, we have local, state, and federal have to work together. Being an independent, it affords me the ability to work with not only somebody like John Klein in the 2nd District, but Jim Oberstar up in the 8th. I have that freedom to represent with not having to worry about the party breathing down my neck if I think we have a good position to get something. But we are we're talking about the finances right now, so the dollars coming back from the federal administration is not going to be easy. But I would be an advocate and a fighter for the 6th District because we need a representative that's willing to fight for these projects.
Thank you. Congresswoman Bachmann, priority projects for the 6th District?
There are very important projects for the 6th District. One is the Stillwater Bridge project. This has been one of the longest ongoing bridge projects, and unfortunately the Obama administration just made a ruling that will make us not have any options going forward getting that bridge built. I think that was a tragic mistake. I worked very closely with our Mayor Kleiss and also with the Minnesota Department of Transportation on the DeSoto Bridge so that we could cut through the red tape and get that bridge up and built quickly. They asked that I not introduce an earmark for that bridge because it would actually slow it down. They wanted to take the money out of the existing money that we had here in the state of Minnesota. I also worked on the 28th Avenue project over in Waite Park as well. We need to reform how we are funding transportation projects. We need to focus on all of the crumbling infrastructure that we have with roads and bridges and interchanges, and we need to work together. I think Minnesota has in many ways a very good model where we come together from all branches of government and we agree on our projects, and I have met with a number of our commissioners and city councilmen and mayors, and I don't go separately on a project unless all of our units of government agree. Once they all agree, then I forward and advocate for those projects. And I think it's important that we maintain our priorities on a high priority transportation projects.
Senator Clark.
And that basically means that most of our district will get nothing. It was at a transportation roundtable with Anoka County, and they showed me what the transportation plan that MnDOT has for them. This was it. Now, in central Minnesota, we actually have some similar issues. And so what it takes is the private sector and state, local, and federal partners to come together. You voted against the money that would create projects here, and that's something that has hurt all of us. We are sending way too much of our taxpayer dollars to Washington. We should be getting some of it back. We don't need to put any new money in the system. What we need is an advocate. Now, it's like triple coupon time. My mother-in-law, Wanda, loves triple coupons. She especially loves it when somebody goes ahead and pays her to buy an item. Right now, it's that time on infrastructure. We can get important projects funded. We can be making sure that with low costs, get people back to jobs, and we have low interest rate. That won't be true in the future. So we need to be going ahead and taking advantage of this time. I know the difference between wasteful government spending and important regional projects, and working with you will get those done.
Okay, we have one final question, then we'll be wrapping up, and this is a 1-minute question. I want to thank Teka Pecans, who contacted us from the Minnesota Commission of Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing and has provided sign language interpreters as well as real-time captioning for our debate today. And she's posed this question. 2 of you have spent thousands on TV and web advertising, but none of you have provided accessible captions for deaf and hard of hearing people. So how do you plan to serve your constituents who may be disabled and who should be included in the solutions for improving the economy? Bob Anderson, you begin this one.
Well, I think that's great that that's available today, and it's not thousands, it's millions on this race, and that just goes to show you how absurd that is, that there should have been a little bit of money so that we could have this type. I would be a representative that would have live town hall meetings, and I would encourage that people could come out, and I would follow your lead here of have somebody that could translate so that people in the audience could all participate, because I think it's important for everybody to have a voice in these. And if we web stream those live town hall meetings, I would have some way of having some closed caption. So I appreciate, and I would follow the lead that you've done here today on my town hall meetings, and I just think that it illustrates the amount of money being spent on this race, that maybe some of it could have been put towards doing something on a closed caption on those commercials. I can proudly say I'm not the one of those 2 that have spent all those millions of dollars.
Thank you. Congresswoman Bachmann.
Well, maybe I could say that I've done everything that I could to stimulate the local economy in this election, and I hope that maybe some of that has helped a little bit here in Minnesota. What I would do is to sit down with individuals in the disability community to find out what we can do to better get a message to communicate to them. They certainly deserve to be communicated with, and it's important to listen and to hear how we can best serve them. I think on a voluntary basis, if campaigns can go ahead and do the encryption, I think that's something that we could look at. Today, what's wonderful is technology is solving and making accessible communication through the TVs you buy today. Just think, the remote controls that you hold, you can flip something on your remote control and you can see the closed captioning. And so we're getting a better quality of life, particularly for our disabled community. My husband and I brought 23 foster children into our home. Many of them were special needs children. And so when we worked with the social services community or with their biological parents, we would sit down with them and find on a very personal, direct basis, how could we best meet this child's need? I think it's important with the disabled community that we sit down and find out specifically what is the need and how can we best address it.
And Senator Clark.
Well, I have a good working relationship with the deaf and hard of hearing community as well as other disabled groups. I'm proud of the work that I've done, including expanding the Minnesota Human Rights Act to include disabilities and working hard to make sure that the North Star Metro Deaf School doesn't get closed next month, which if we hadn't worked hard at the end of session and make that happen, which was hard to do, it would be. I work together right now doing town halls, but doing a variety of meetings. Our campaign has all of the text of all of our ads online. We also have some people within the deaf and hard of hearing community who have been disseminating information about what I am doing and ways that they can be involved and help out. And unlike Congresswoman Bachmann, I have voted to support special education funding, worked hard to make sure that funding actually gets paid back so our districts aren't the ones that are trying to figure out how to be taking care of the needs through the general education funding. It's something that needs to be done and something I'll work on in the federal government.
One final question. 30 seconds on this. And Senator Clark, you'll start. Do you feel there have been any claims or public advertisements that have misrepresented you or your policies so grossly that you want to mention them here?
Well, Congresswoman Bachmann, you're on your 10th attack yet. I didn't think I was that scary. You'll notice I do not have horns. You'll notice my face is not on Mount Rushmore. And I didn't know how powerful I was. I don't know why I'm running for Congress when I have so much power right now. I think that every single ad that has been done has been false and misleading. The truth is, I have voted hard and worked hard to keep taxes down for people in Minnesota. We've had tough and challenging times. We've cut over 10%, like I said, 10% in just the last 2 years alone. But I've worked on many things. The attacks you've made on me are really about balancing the budget, but nobody would know that by what your ads say.
Thank you. Bob, anything that's misrepresented you?
Do we have an hour? No. I would just like to say, I think you should both be ashamed of yourselves. So, because when we're talking about all the fiscal problems that we have, and we're talking about just helping out people with disabilities and things, and you're spending $15 million between the two of you on these stupid attack ads that people are sick and tired of it, that I think we should get back to some common sense in politics. And at least I offer that in this race. So, thank you.
Congresswoman Bachmann.
I think it's important that we are having the debate today and that in the ads, I know it's difficult to watch them. I don't like watching them and seeing them myself either. And thank God, 1 week from today, we can all go to the voting booth and finally put an end to these ads. So I think that's something we can all agree on. Yes, there have been false and misleading statements that have been said about me, whether it's on Social Security or outsourcing. This is the bottom line that I want you to know. I am focused on keeping the main thing, which is let's turn the economy around and create jobs. I have been fearless in taking on these non-competitive policies that have been coming out of Washington, D.C. It's why I've been made one of the top targets for Speaker Pelosi to defeat. And I am not ashamed to talk about my record and my opponents. And I hope when we go to the voting booth on Tuesday, we'll keep in mind, how are we going to turn the economy around? How are we going to start jobs? And let's have our vote count.
That was a long sentence. All right. I want to acknowledge to the press that there will be a post session in the indicated room around the corner if you would like to interview the candidates further. I want to thank our participants, the St. Cloud Rotary Club, and also our chamber members for participating in the 6th Congressional Candidates Debate. I want to thank our audience. You were fantastic. Have a great week and vote next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hey, aren't you awesome?